I heard it. Herb, why don't you tell us, Herb, about the very early days, after we've toured the great facility here and all the things that have happened. Maybe Jimmy could say something about how this facility came to build, how long it was in coming, and all those sorts of things.
Well, it's amazing. I was very surprised coming into this building and seeing something that I didn't really envision myself. We spoke of training centers several times, but it just didn't happen. I have a few stories to tell here, and maybe it's quite lengthy, but if I get too boring, you can always cut me off.
Change the subject.
I happened to be in on the beginning of this, and it happened to me somewhat coincidental because apprenticeship was not the main item when I came into this situation. Iron Workers Local 24 Apprenticeship Program, as viewed by myself, Herb Schillereff, my membership number is 389231. Some 63 years ago, when I was obligated in July of 1947. Myself coming off the farm and completing high school, I was hired by the sugar factory as a laborer in Fort Morgan, Colorado. The sugar factory was being updated, and the iron workers asked me to work with them as they offered 70 cents per hour and the factory was paying 45 cents an hour. In July of 1947, I was obligated as an apprentice iron worker. During my 2 years as an apprentice, no classes or related training were ever provided. I was usually paid 75% of the journeyman's wages and learned the trade from the job. In July of 49, I was given a journeyman ironworker's book. No test was given, and I continue to keep my ironworker's books. Remember the old books where you had the monthly stamp? I think they're quite historic. Well, the Korean War began in June of 1950, and the draft board canceled all deferments. Therefore, I enlisted in the Navy, who assigned me to the Seabees. In April 1954, I returned to the ironworkers and again continued college. In the spring of '56, I had completed 2 years of college at Colorado State University in Fort Collins, Colorado. In the spring, I'm going to say about April 1956, Don Herford, the business agent of Local 24, spoke to me after a union meeting saying they'd like to have me join the bargaining agreement because of my experience in education. That week, Chuck Graham, president of Local 24, telephoned and spoke with John McKean, who was president of the Rocky Mountain District Council, would be in Denver for a pre-meeting, and I was invited to attend. During this meeting, I learned that Local 24, plus all the other locals of this district, would be bargaining for the health and welfare to begin in July of '57. And the pension plan, they hope would begin in '59 or '61. During the next union meeting, I was appointed assistant agent to help in the office and with the bargaining committee. The other officer, Red Doyle, who was the financial secretary, he and I were obligated together. We both started the craft together. During the next union meeting, the bargaining agreement began to inform the members of the cost to have health and welfare plan, and this cost would be deducted from their paycheck. Before, the only thing deducted, of course, was taxes and Social Security. Nothing else. This did not fly. All hell broke loose, and many fights, many friends broke up. Local 24 finally approved the health and welfare, but was the only local in the district council to do so. Salt Lake, Casper, New Mexico, Idaho, Montana all voted no. They would not agree to have that money taken from their wages.
Do you remember how much that was, sir?
I think it's talking around 25 cents.
25 cents.
However, down the road, several years later, they did approve in the district council. But Johnny McKean was very poignant, as he had wanted the head office of the health and welfare and pension to be here in Denver, because it is the largest local in the largest area in the biggest city. The contractor's complaint at the beginning, as I recall, would be the need to hire additional payroll people and the supervision of the payout of the medical claims and later the pension claims. One must remember in 1956, we had no computers, no adding machines, no copy machines. One had to do the composition and typing by hand. I also could type. It was a real joy to try and type copies. If you recall, all copies had to have a copy sheet between the two sheets. And if you made an error, it was a real problem. There was no way to erase. Therefore, all the math and composing estimates was my forte. However, I am certain that others could have done the work or even better as what I had done. I believe later, after it was agreed for health and welfare to begin in 1957, and the pension plan would be discussed again in the next years of bargaining, that during this meeting, Bill Zimmerman, the owner of Zimmerman Metals, spoke up and said, I had hired some men that don't know nothing, and they look and act like bums off the street. John McKean spoke up and said that the apprentice program was being updated in all areas, and we realized that better training is going to be needed. After a couple of meetings, again, this apprenticeship was asked, and contractors, primarily Midwest Steel again, brought up the ordeal of apprenticeship and offered the use of their shop. It could be helped with training, and also believed that better training was really needed. John McKean looked at me and said, Herb, do you believe you could look into this apprenticeship? At which time Chuck Graham said, Herb, I'm going to appoint you to take care of this apprenticeship program and assure these contractors of qualified apprentices. During the next local meeting, again, all hell broke loose. Again, as additional cost per apprentice. I believe I said last time we chatted it was 1 cent, but thinking back, it was 1/2 cent for apprenticeship that the local finally approved. And the fund would go to 1,000 and then cut off down to 500. Then back again it would begin. Several things. At first we had to organize a committee, as the local could not be charged with handling the funds of apprenticeship, the same as with health and welfare. Again, the development and hard relations. I met with Colorado Department of Labor, with the Federal Department of Labor. I met with Opportunity School, and we held our first classes there in the local. Opportunity School, through their vocational plan, I believe paid instructors $1.10 per hour. With us, we had 2 classes per week and 2 hours per class. So I was paid about $4 a week, which I used for my expenses and supplies. I did update the apprenticeship standards. Later in 72 or 73, I updated the standards again, and the international requested and we granted use for the standards nationwide. So our standards were used in all locals beginning, I'm pretty sure, in '72. The first class of apprenticeship where we had control, you may say, we had the apprentices indentured. We started more of a boot camp type apprenticeship program. We had received and used a pass-fail type, I can't find my word here, what I want, John. Aptitude test.
Aptitude test.
And then also we required a high school diploma or GED. And the apprentice was indentured to the committee. They would have charge of where he worked and when he worked. And with our safety program, haircuts and clean clothes were also part of the curriculum. I kept the curriculum and the records primarily in my garage until about 1969, when the local union approved apprenticeship coordinator's salary. I stayed in the local union about a year and a half. Then we moved to the building trades building up the street. And I believe it was in '71 when they furnished the first car for me and had expenses. I do wish to close with honors to all those who helped spoke up of apprenticeship. In the very beginning, let's see, do I have my pages right? Yeah. In the very beginning, the only person who really spoke up and helped was Joe Filippini. He was the only one who would shout down the ironworkers at these meetings and spoke well of apprenticeship. Of course, one reason he was able to do that, he was usually a superintendent and hired people. And so they would listen to him. Chuck Graham and Don Herford were both very strong supporters also. Don Herford, without Don, I do not believe the Housing Welfare Program would be here. It probably would have started later when the district council did. After the first 2 or 3 classes, excuse me, we began to have more support for apprenticeship. And I cannot list all the people that helped us. And I must say it would not, of course, begin apprenticeship without the many, many good people that we do have in our local. And I believe that's primarily some of the basic things I remember. I wish there were other people around that would help relate to this. I think I'm bragging a little bit too much on myself. There had to be help. There was a lot of disgusted people. Some of the items that I mentioned about the old permit system was the basic manner in which journeymen or whoever joined the local unions. And that was that if you knew someone who was an iron worker or you had relatives, they would bring these people in when extra help was needed. And after they worked a couple of years, they was usually given a Rodman book first. And then after a couple more years, they could acquire a structural book if they wanted it. But only in times of real hardship was it ever required where you showed your book if you had a structural book or a rod book. Yeah. There were very few of us that had a journeyman's book. Mm-hmm. And those of us that had journeyman's book did come up through what they call the apprenticeship program. But I never did receive any training or formal classroom. If I can be of help or try and answer some questions, I'll be happy to do that.
I don't need a question answer. I need to say some things. He's worried about his bragging about himself, and he hasn't said near enough. So, I was, at the time, I didn't think I was too fortunate. But Herb was my apprenticeship coordinator. I had just come back from Vietnam, and I thought I was just about, I was very independent, let's say. And we didn't really have any disagreements, but I really got my back up. Herb mentioned haircut, shaving a certain way, and of course that's during the period when I thought after 4 years and 10 months of shaving every day and everything that it wasn't necessary for me to shave to do my job. Herb corrected my thinking for me, and eventually it all made sense, just like today. Hearing that one of the reasons the apprenticeship was even begun is to give a little bit of dignity and credence to the craft by looking like more than somebody that rolled off a freight train. Makes a lot of sense, and it still does today. Image is still a thing that I think everybody struggles with. And I can almost guarantee you, having been in Herb's position and Jimmy's position in between, the issues are still the same. The issues are getting apprentices to come to school and to appreciate it and to understand that what you're trying to do is help them. There's no benefit in this for the JTC, to speak of. The one that benefits the most is the individual apprentice. And sometimes it's hard to tell somebody this is good for you. But personally, I can speak that it was. It may not be what we like. It may not be the way we would do things. But in the end, the bigger picture determines what we do and what we come up with. The product is a skilled craftsman. And sometimes it's hard to get there from the raw material that you get when you get in. This facility, and I'm like her, I'm still amazed that after all these years, and I don't know the dates, I just know this property sat here full of weeds, and we mowed weeds out here for 25, 30 years. Finally, it's probably the premier facility in the city and county of Denver, and if it's in Denver, it's in the state. There is no facility that is even close to this, and there are some nice new ones. But I think the opportunity now is for the ironworkers to sort of leverage the facility they have and get the recognition and the things that they deserve. And I know this is something Jerry's talked about, but if you don't promote yourself, and if you keep saying we're the best kept secret in the world, you're going to get the same results every time. The opportunity is here to promote registered apprenticeship, ironwork, all of these skilled craftsman things to people that can make a difference in what apprenticeship is. If we keep hiding it and being afraid of if we say this or we don't do that or we do this and don't do this, I think you're going to be caught in the same boat again. I don't think apprenticeship and the unions anymore have maybe some of the secrets they had before. They thought they were the only game in town. We'll keep it that way. We won't share. We won't do anything, and those days are gone. If you don't go out and promote yourself, nobody else is going to do it for you. And I can tell you the people right across the street don't know what you do. They have no idea what the cost is. They have no idea what the result is. So the more positive and favorable publicity the apprenticeship can get while this facility is hot, I think it'll make a big difference. I know Herb comes from old school, and I'm kind of an old school guy, but my attitude has changed. We can't be so arrogant and country clubbish that we think if they want to know, they're going to come and ask us. I think you have to share. I think you get the word out there. There are people out there today that do not understand that there is no federal money of any size involved in training. This is self-funded. Yep. Everyone will assume this is being subsidized somehow through taxes or federal government or things like that. And that works against you right now in this economy. So I think getting the message out in a positive way about the great things that happen in all the training facilities and all of the programs, it should be a priority. Some of the other crafts use their facilities for political gatherings, for a number of different things, still within their tax status. But they use it to promote within the city and county of Denver and the people that do it to keep these things going. Back to the facilities and things. I don't remember when I started as an instructor. I think it was 1973. That time you had to have 5 years experience. You had to take some itinerant teacher training classes, as they were so called at the time, that Herb again had established as a method to upgrade the view of apprenticeship instructors in vocational education. We did all that, and the first place I taught was at West High School. I had the first and second year related classes. We taught at West High School. The welding classes were still held down at Emily Griffith Opportunity School. Once a week for related instruction, all those sorts of things. And it just steadily progressed. I think we've come a long way. When we moved down to 2555 South Santa Fe in the Multi-Craft Training Center, it was much like you felt, I think, coming from Walnut Street to here. It was a place to go every day to do your thing, to have a place dedicated to your training and not just a generic classroom. From there, of course, down to Santa Fe or down to Walnut Street was another move necessitated by need, I think. The AGC decided they would try and sell the building because everyone's in financial straits, so all the crafts that were down there moved to their own training facilities. The carpenters, the millwrights, the laborers, the insulators, all found their own new facilities. Everyone moved out and they sold the building and did all that. So we moved down to Walnut Street and we're there with Dennis O'Brien for a number of years.
25.
Was it that long?
Yes, sir.
That was a long time, I know that. And finally, I think the culmination, what everybody was looking for, a dedicated iron worker training facility that's state-of-the-art in 2010. I think it's a big step, and tell us how it happened, Jimmy. How did you finally get the membership, the contractors, and everybody on the same page?
It's the evolution is the same as when this apprenticeship began. It was born out of need for trained individuals. It was born out of that need, and then of course change in our craft is a constant. And I think that's what necessitated to the place that we are right now. You know, the thing that I think about as I sit here right now is whoever views our thoughts on this, our feelings on the training, on the apprenticeship, on all the players involved, with you being like the original Mustanger in terms of helping develop what we actually adhere to today, is quite historic. You're looking at 54, 55 years in the making as far as the apprenticeship entity itself as a training arm, as a viable part of Ironworkers Local 24, along with all the contractors that's been involved over the year, the management side. And this facility was necessitated on the fact that